Hello there, you're watching All 24 News Wellness Program with me, Kirifa Zachary, and up next are the top stories. Algeria and Slovakia sign a joint declaration to boost cooperation. Embassy in Bratislava officially opens. An African startup conference sets roadmap for digital transformation. Also in our news, Sahrawi president rejects unilateral solutions, condemns EU-Morocco collusion and warns of regional threats. Next up, in Palestine, Gaza sees 2 martyrs as ceasefire is violated again and the West Bank is hit by wide-scale Zionist arrest campaign. And in Europe, Zelensky submits revised peace plan to Washington as Trump calls for election. Meanwhile, Algeria urges UN to push for halt to hostilities and direct talks. The details are right up. Welcome back. It's great to have you with us tonight. First up in our news, on Tuesday, Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf officially opened Algeria's new embassy in Bratislava, kicking off his visit to Slovakia. The ceremony brought together Slovak officials, ambassadors, and members of the Algerian community in the country. In his speech, Mr. Attaf highlighted the importance of strengthening ties between Algeria and Slovakia, aiming to take their friendship and cooperation to the next level.
And I am deeply pleased and truly honored to begin the program of my visit to Slovakia with the solemn moment, a solemn moment reflected by the official inauguration of the Algerian embassy in this charming and historic city of Bratislava. Such moments are indeed very precious in the life of nations. They mark turning points. They open new horizons. And they remain forever engraved in our common memory. Today is one of these moments for both Algeria and friendly Slovakia. As we celebrate this precious moment, I wish to convey my deepest appreciation to the Slovak authorities for their important decision to reopen their embassy in Algiers.
On the same occasion, Algeria's Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf said the new embassy in Slovakia shows Algeria's commitment to boosting ties with Bratislava. He highlighted ongoing political talks and the push to explore new opportunities in key economic sectors, aiming to take bilateral cooperation to the next level.
Today's inauguration provides the perfect occasion to solemnly reaffirm Algeria's full commitment to working hand in hand with Slovakia as we open a bright new chapter in the history of our bilateral relations. A new chapter of strengthened political dialogue, rooted in mutual trust, sincere commitment, and unwavering respect. A new chapter of expanded economic cooperation in energy, in industry, in agriculture, in new technologies, and in every other promising field. And a new chapter.
In the same context, Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf expressed his satisfaction with Algeria and Slovakia's shared commitment to peace and justice. Speaking at the embassy's inauguration in Bratislava, he praised their coordination in upholding international law, protecting state sovereignty, rejecting foreign interference, and supporting the right to self-determination.
We have also come to realize that although we hail from different cultures, we are profoundly united by the same fundamental values: a firm defense of sovereignty and independence, a clear rejection of foreign interference, a constant quest for peace and justice in the world, and an unwavering belief that every people has the sacred right to choose its own path and to shape its own future and own destiny. We have also come to realize that despite all apparent differences, Algeria and Slovakia have always been like-minded on the global stage. Our positions are grounded on the same values and principles. We regard the major issues of our time through the same lenses, and we stand together to defend the most sacred achievements that mankind has ever made: international law, the multilateral system, and the organization of the United Nations itself.
On a related note, Algeria and Slovakia signed a joint declaration to set priorities for their cooperation and map out a roadmap to strengthen ties. The agreement followed talks in Bratislava between Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf and his Slovak counterpart George Plenar. The discussions reviewed current relations and explored future opportunities in key areas like energy, renewables, pharmaceuticals, water, industry, and agriculture.
وأعتقد بكل صدق وإخلاص
I firmly believe with all sincerity that the joint declaration we signed today, along with the clear roadmap it contains, truly reflect our shared ambition to build strong economic relations that keep pace with the developmental goals and programs of our countries. We are also convinced that the prospects for cooperation and partnership between our nations are numerous and diverse.
And as you followed in our headlines, the Fourth African Startup Conference in Algeria set out a clear roadmap for Africa's digital transformation. Over 3 days of talks and workshops, the event pushed for a unified approach to tackling the continent's tech challenges, aiming to protect Africa's digital and technological sovereignty. Here's Karim Mustafawi now.
At the conclusion of the Fourth African Startup Conference, Algeria succeeded in turning years of coordination into a concrete, actionable roadmap, the Algiers Declaration, aiming to shift Africa from being merely a content creator to a true decision maker in the global digital economy.
The African Startup Conference, through the ministerial meeting, is an opportunity each year to update Algiers' roadmap. This roadmap is an official document for the African Union that is updated each time and used to develop innovation in startups and give young Africans the opportunity to contribute to a new economy based on youth, knowledge, and technology.
The conference marked a double success for Algeria and Africa. It reinforced the entrepreneurship ecosystem and for the first time delivered a unified African position on digital platforms.
The Algiers Declaration project, launched today and approved, reaffirms Africa's ability to develop joint positions and influence the rules of global digital governance. We reiterate that when Africa unifies its positions, its voice is heard and respected.
This year's edition reflects Algeria's commitment to embedding modern technologies across vital sectors, ensuring development that is sustainable and balanced. And because the African diaspora remains a driving force in the continent's innovation journey, Algeria devoted a special day to highlighting its pivotal role in financing and supporting African innovation. In the end, this Fourth African Startup Conference reaffirmed Algeria's role as a key continental hub for entrepreneurship.
In the same context, the African Union's Vice President Selma Malika Haddadi praised the African Startup Conference in Algeria as inspiring, especially after Africa ratified a new tax framework for startups, innovation, and research. Speaking through AU Commissioner Gaspar Banyan Kimbuna, she said the move shows Africa is serious about keeping its young talent and rewarding initiative and risk-taking.
الجزائر أولاً حتى في الشبكة الجيل الرابع أو الألياف البصرية هي تجربة.
Today we have the FTTH network reaching 1.6 gigabyte per second. This is the first time on the African continent that this internet speed has reached homes at such low prices. It is an experience that makes us proud, and God willing, 5G will be installed in the coming month to cover the entire country.
In another development, Sahrawi President Brahim Ghali reaffirmed his people's rejection of any solution that ignores their right to self-determination. Speaking at the opening of the National Secretariat session, he praised the UN Security Council's latest resolution, noting it emphasizes that a just solution in Western Sahara must guarantee the Sahrawi people's right to choose their own future.
The national cause has maintained a constant presence on the international stage, and the status of the Sahrawi state has strengthened within the African Union, its institutions and its partnerships. The period under review also saw the adoption of UN Security Council Resolution 2797, which reaffirmed that any solution to the Western Sahara conflict must guarantee the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination, like all peoples and the nations of the world, in line with the UN Charter and resolutions.
On the same occasion, Sahrawi President Brahim Ghali renewed his call for the African Union to act decisively at all levels to complete Africa's decolonization and ensure the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination.
We remind the African Union of the need to act by all means and at all levels to complete the process of decolonization in the African continent and end its last manifestation, the question of Western Sahara, because Africa's freedom will remain incomplete as long as the Sahrawi people do not enjoy theirs.
Similarly, the Sahrawi president called on the European Union to stop what he described as shameful moves to strike deals with Morocco that exploit and take the Sahrawi people's resources.
The European Union is required more than anyone else to respect international law, international humanitarian law, and its own European law, and to stop the shameful circumvention used to pass agreement with Morocco aimed at looting and stealing the resources of the Sahrawi people, the sole sovereign authority over Western Sahara.
In a related story, Algeria and Slovakia reaffirmed their support for the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination, in line with UN resolutions. The pledge came during talks in Bratislava between Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf and his Slovak counterpart George Plenar, where they also discussed regional and international issues of mutual interest.
أحيي موقف سلوفاكيا من قضية الصحراء الغربية.
I commend Slovakia's position on the Western Sahara issue, particularly its fairness to the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination in accordance with the relevant United Nations resolutions and in line with the international doctrine, the established doctrine of the UN in the field of decolonization.
الراسخة في مجال تصفية الاستعمار.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa called for stronger diplomatic efforts to support the Sahrawi people and their right to self-determination. Speaking at his party's annual session on Monday, he criticized the recent UN Security Council resolution on Western Sahara, saying it strays from the UN Charter's guarantees of freedom of peoples under colonial rule.
We must be concerned that the struggle of the people of Western Sahara for self-determination has been set back by the recent UN Security Council resolution, which strongly endorsed Morocco's autonomy plan as the most feasible solution, shifting away from past UN positions on a referendum on self-determination. This development calls for the intensification of diplomatic efforts to find a path forward that prioritizes the rights and the interests of the people of Western Sahara.
Along similar lines, several French unions have renewed their support for the Sahrawi people's fight for self-determination and an end to the plundering of their resources. Meeting with the Sahrawi Workers' Union on Monday, they laid out a roadmap to unite efforts, defend Sahrawi rights under international law, and reject Moroccan attempts to bypass them. Meanwhile, Brussels is set to host a major protest today, Wednesday, against the new EU-Morocco trade deal, which includes products from occupied Western Sahara. The demonstration in front of the European Commission is backed by human rights group and the Sahrawi community. At the same time, the European Parliament will hold a seminar on the agreement's impact on the UN-brokered Western Sahara settlement, with international experts taking part. In other regional news, the Moroccan Front for the Support of Palestine has launched a week of protest against the 2020 normalization agreement with the Zionist entity. They are calling on citizens to join sit-ins and marches across Moroccan cities. Meanwhile, the Generation Z movement will resume its protests today, International Human Rights Day, demanding the release of detainees, justice for killed peaceful protesters, and an end to arbitrary arrest and judicial revenge. Shifting focus to another topical development, violence continues in Gaza as Zionist forces keep violating the ceasefire, killing 2 Palestinians on Tuesday and wounding others. An airstrike hit a house in Deir el-Bala, while earlier a woman and 6 others were killed and injured in the Halowa refugee camp. Gaza authorities say the occupation has carried out 738 violations since the ceasefire began, leaving 386 dead and nearly 1,000 injured. Aid deliveries, meanwhile, remain severely limited, with just a fraction of fuel and relief supplies reaching the territory.
They were sitting in their home thinking they were safe because there is a ceasefire and nothing is happening. He was bummed while he was at home. His mother was few steps away from him. God saved her. There is no safety here. There is no consideration for the ceasefire. The war is still going on. People are bombed every day in their homes.
Meanwhile, Al-Quds brigades announced they've closed the file on Zionist prisoners after returning the last body last Wednesday in northern Gaza. Spokesman Abu Hamza said the resistance fully honored the first phase of the ceasefire and urged mediators to pressure the Zionist entity to stop violations and meet its obligations under the agreement. In the occupied West Bank, occupation forces carried out raids and arrests on Tuesday, demolishing several homes. 2 people, including a child, were wounded in the El Amari refugee camp near Ramallah. At least 40 Palestinians were arrested across the West Bank, while 4 homes in Al Khalil and Al Quds and a commercial building in Ramallah were also destroyed. In this context, Algeria and Slovakia have pledged support for international efforts to uphold the Gaza ceasefire. In a joint declaration signed by Foreign Ministers Ahmed Attaf and Gerard Planar, both countries also emphasized backing a 2-state solution and the establishment of a Palestinian state.
من هذا المنظور أن أحيي
From this perspective, I commend Slovakia's position on development in the Palestinian cause, particularly its support for the Palestinian people's right to establish their independent state.
في إقامة دولته المستقلة.
Elsewhere in the Middle East, in Lebanon to be precise, occupation forces carried out a series of airstrikes Monday evening targeting southern areas, including Mount Safi, Iqlim al-Tufah, and Wadi Azzi between Nabatea and Sidon, according to the Lebanese national news agency, that is. Moving on to Europe now. In Ukraine, diplomatic efforts are underway as attacks escalate between Kiev and Moscow. Zelensky has submitted a revised peace plan to Washington, while Trump questioned his strategy, claiming Ukraine is losing and calling for presidential elections so the people can choose their leadership. Here's Salman Asib now.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky says Kyiv will submit a 20-point peace plan to the US on Tuesday after talks in London with British, German and French leaders. He stressed it does not include giving up any territory to Russia.
Today, we reviewed with our team the results of yesterday's talks in London with European national security advisors following leaders' agreements. We're actively working on all parts of potential steps to end the war. The Ukrainian and European components are ready to present to the US, aiming to make them actionable. We remain committed to a real peace and in constant contact with the US. Everything depends on whether Russia is willing to stop the bloodshed. The refined documents will be sent to the US soon. Glory to Ukraine.
Donald Trump, meanwhile, argued that Ukrainians should decide their own leadership through elections and should seriously consider the US proposals to end the war, which he says most Ukrainians support.
They're not producing. We're talking about Ukraine. They talk, but they don't produce. And the war just keeps going on and on. I mean, 4 years now it's been going on, long before I got here. This is not my war. This is Joe Biden's war. And in terms of America, it's a very sad thing. And the only reason I really care about it is because I hate to see young, beautiful people being killed.
Ukrainian authorities reported 5 civilians killed on Tuesday, 3 in Donetsk, 2 in Kherson. Sumy was hit again by drone strikes, leaving the city without power and causing casualties still unknown. Diplomatically, the Kremlin denied claims that Russia plans to attack NATO or revive the Soviet Union, calling them nonsense.
Владимир Путин не хочет восстановить СССР.
Vladimir Putin does not want to restore the Soviet Union. It is impossible, and he said this many times. Claims that Russia intends to revive the USSR show disrespect to our partners in the CIS. The German Chancellor seems uninformed, and talk of Russia preparing to attack NATO is pure nonsense.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz fired back, calling for greater European independence and saying Europe does not need the US to save democracy.
Some parts of the US security strategy are understandable, but from a European perspective, some are unacceptable. I see no need for Americans to rescue democracy in Europe. We can do it ourselves. It is time for Europe and Germany to become more independent in security policy from the US.
As the fighting rages on, diplomacy remains fragile. Zelensky pushes for a peaceful resolution, Trump waits in with calls for elections, and Europe debates its role, all while civilians continue to bear the brunt of the conflict. With no end in sight, both the battlefield and the negotiating table remain tense.
On a related note, Algeria has called for an immediate end to hostilities in Ukraine to restore regional security. Speaking at a UN Security Council session, an Algerian diplomat stressed the need to protect civilians and infrastructure under international law and urged dialogue to push forward direct peace talks.
Algeria reaffirms the urgency of stopping hostilities and ending this conflict. We also reaffirm the paramount need to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure through the full respect of international law, including international humanitarian law. Equally crucial is facilitating humanitarian assistance without discrimination and ensuring it reaches all those in need.
And in another development in Africa this time, Adam Rijal, spokesperson for the Darfur Displaced Persons and Refugees Committee, described the situation in Tawila camps as catastrophic. He said 70% of arrivals from Al Fashir face acute malnutrition, dozens of children have died, and thousands remain without aid. He also reported over 3,000 wounded by gunfire and more than 1,600 women subjected to sexual violence. Meanwhile, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, warned of a new wave of displacement in Sudan as the rapid support forces advance. Speaking to Reuters, he said partial displacement could turn into a mass exodus if fighting reaches a major city like Ubaida, recalling last October's fall of Al Fashir.
If any other major city is hit by the war, I'm I'm not saying it will happen. I simply don't know. I don't have that military intelligence. But if, say, a city like El Obeid, which is even closer to Khartoum, another major city in that area, if that were to be not necessarily taken but engulfed by the war, I am pretty sure that we would see more exodus. It's the big urban centers that produce most of the display.
And now it's time to catch up on more news stories making headlines in the News in Brief.
Pakistani media reported that several soldiers were killed in an armed attack targeting a security post in the northwest of the country. According to local media sources, gunmen stormed a security checkpoint in the Quran region near the Afghan border, killing 6 Pakistani soldiers.
For the first time in the history of P28. And sir,
U.S. President Donald Trump revealed his intention to expand U.S. military operations in the Caribbean to Mexico and Colombia. In a television interview with Politico, Trump declined to confirm the possibility of sending U.S. troops to Venezuela, but he did not rule out launching military operations similar to those conducted off the Venezuelan coast against drug cartels in Mexico and Colombia.
In Cambodia, authorities announced that 4 people were killed and 10 others wounded in a Thai army shelling on the border Monday evening. Meanwhile, the Thai army confirmed that 2 soldiers were killed and 18 others were wounded in the disputed province of Preach Vihar, despite a ceasefire agreement signed last October by both sides.
The Algerian national football team qualified for the quarter-finals of the Qatar 2025 Arab Cup after its victory against Iraq at Lusail Stadium in Doha. Algeria topped the Group D with 7 points ahead of Iraq, Bahrain and Sudan.
And that's the end of our news for tonight. To catch up on any part you missed or catch up with the latest, you can always visit our social media platforms. Till next time, do take care.